Um, Today, we are going to talk about depression and anxiety, which are very, very, very common in not only high school students, but people in general. So a lot of times we're quick to recognize physical illnesses because we can see them, or disabilities because sometimes we can see, sometimes we can't. Like I have scoliosis and no one can usually see it, typically, unless I was like at the pool or whatnot. But yeah, a lot of times some people are really open about mental illness, other people not as much. And it can depend on your family, your support system, your friends. But mental illness is just as real, just as important to recognize, to treat, to help people with as a physical illness or disability. So what we're going to talk about today is what is the key differences between anxiety and depression, and recognizing the signs and symptoms. We'll identify basic coping skills that can be helpful. So studies have proven certain coping skills are helpful for people who struggle with anxiety, and certain coping skills are helpful for those who struggle with depression. Being anxious or sad for a short period of time is regularly pretty natural for us as humans. So we've all probably felt stressed out before, or we've all probably had times where we were sad and we cried, right? So it's important to recognize that being sad is not the same thing as being depressed, and having anxiety is not the same thing as being just stressed out. So this slideshow does not replace the advice of a medical doctor. If you're unsure of next steps, or if you think you may have anxiety or depression that is clinical, reaching out to a trusted adult, a loved one, you can talk to me individually or your life coach individually, and we can help you through the next steps, or your doctor. So anxiety is when the mind and the body typically has a reaction to stressful, dangerous, or unfamiliar situations. A sense of unease or distress, maybe dreading an event. But certain levels of anxiety or stress are relatively healthy because they help us to stay alert, aware. They protect us from real world threats, like if a bear or a lion or something was attacking us in the wild, if a car was just raging down the road and we wanted to avoid getting hit. Anxiety can be helpful to some degree, or stress. If you have extreme levels of anxiety, though, it can actually affect your ability to function on a day-to-day basis. So what we call this is when our levels of anxiety are high and they're affecting our day-to-day life, we call this generalized anxiety disorder, which we have a form that we use with our students if they think, hey, I might be struggling with that. So if you're interested in that form, I can provide you one. But it's characterized by people who have excessive or uncontrollable worry over events and activities. So if your worrying is a little more excessive, or it's holding you back from your day-to-day life, it could be generalized anxiety disorder. Once again, not a doctor, not diagnosing anybody with anxiety. That's not within my power. Yet I am just letting you know that's what generalized anxiety disorder is defined as. Anxiety and worry for generalized anxiety disorder can cause significant distress or interfere with our daily life. So we may cancel plans with friends. We may make excessive detailed to-do lists and feel like we're not good enough if we don't get all of it done. With generalized anxiety disorder, some people replay a conversation in their head again and again and overanalyze it to the point it makes them sick or fearful. And it can affect our academic performance and also our social functioning and how we interact with others. So does anybody have any questions about what anxiety looks like versus day-to-day versus someone who gets stressed out occasionally? Anybody have a question in the chat? I'm trying to see. Okay. Alrighty. So the signs and symptoms of anxiety are excessive worrying, feeling agitated or restless, tired because your brain might be on overdrive, difficulty focusing because there's so many different things going on in your mind at one time. Some people with anxiety are more irritable or get more frustrated with tasks. If they don't understand, they may find themselves getting frustrated. Tension in the muscles, like I struggle with feeling anxiety sometimes. So I'll feel it in my shoulders and I won't even notice it till the end of the day. Trouble falling asleep. Panic attacks for severe anxiety can also happen. I have a couple of family members who have struggled with that. Avoiding social situations. So some people will cancel plans to have excessive anxiety often, while other people may always have to be busy. Like they always have to do something every second unless they feel like they're not doing enough. Fears, irrational fears. So having a fear is one thing, but starting to be afraid of things that are not a real life threat and building up a story about it, that could be a sign of anxiety. And these are all taken from healthline.com and some of my own personal experiences. And there's some physical symptoms like rapid heartbeat, stomach issues, or indigestion. Sometimes headaches can be related to anxiety as well. Not always, but sometimes. So in addition to seeking help from your doctor or a medical provider, there are some coping skills for anxiety. These coping skills can help people who have day-to-day stress, but maybe don't have an anxiety diagnosis. Those who have an anxiety diagnosis, I encourage you to work with your doctor and to find out which of these coping skills can help go hand in hand with whatever your doctor is already saying is healthy. So doing a yoga or meditation can be helpful. If physical touch is okay for you, getting a massage can be relaxing for those with anxiety. Having a snack can be helpful. Sometimes people with anxiety forget to eat or could skip meals. So taking time to consciously eat. That I was like, that's me. I'll be like, oh, I'm snacking, I've missed dinner. So sometimes skipping meals can happen if you're anxious. Some people might overeat if they're anxious. So keeping in mind that not everyone having a snack will help their anxiety. But if you're not feeling very grounded, having a cup of hot tea, maybe something warm. They say to limit your alcohol and caffeine, especially after noon. If you're having trouble sleeping, having that second pop or that second cup of coffee can really increase the anxiety. Alcohol, which we think of as being relaxing, and it is a depressant, so we'll talk about that when we move on to depression. But alcohol can also cause anxiety because our mind may not feel like it's in the right place. Making sure you get enough sleep, 7 to 9 hours, depending on your body. I like 8. Exercising can be helpful for anxiety as long as it's not too rigorous. Taking deep breaths. So the 4-7-8 breath or the square breath, the extended exhale, the Ujjayi, which was the wave breath, the one that was kind of like Darth Vader. What else? Any breaths that have an equal part ratio or a longer exhale are really good for anxiety. Remind yourself that you're doing your best. I have this little mantra written on a Post-it at home that says, you're doing your best and your best is enough. And that really reminds me every morning to just get out of bed and know that no matter how rough maybe my math lesson went that day, or it didn't feel like anyone was understanding it, if I write that note to myself, it reminds me that I am doing my best is enough. That helps a lot. Counting to 10, accept what you cannot control. So focus on what you can control versus what you can't. So you don't feel as like powerless in a situation, and that can help. Welcome humor. So you can look up jokes or allow yourself to laugh if something's funny. Replacing your automatic negative thoughts with something more positive. Finding a support network. There are tons of groups out there for people who struggle with anxiety or depression, and just knowing that you're not alone can be a huge help. Knowing your triggers, so that way you can step out of that situation or implement a coping skill before the stress brims over the edge. Talking to someone, and I got these from Anxiety and Depression Association of America. Are there any coping skills that you guys do for stress or anxiety that you don't see up here that you find helpful?
Coloring.
Coloring? Ooh, that's a good one. I love that. Yeah, coloring's really good. Very good. The art therapy we've done is helpful. Art therapy is great for anxiety and depression, really anything you're struggling with. Good. Very good. Anything else that you guys wanted to add, or do you feel like that's good? Okay. Taking a hot shower is really helpful for me, and being present of the heat of the water on my back. Like if I think about the temperature of the water, the sensation of the water on my, I know this just sounds really weird, but if you think of the sensation on your scalp of the water, or start to just take things a little bit slower and enjoy, you may find a little less anxiety. So what is depression? So depression is different than just feeling sad. It's for clinical, usually the doctor would ask you a bunch of questions about how long it's been lasting. But it can be a loss of interest in activities, disconnecting from activities you once enjoyed. It doesn't mean you're necessarily crying all the time, but you may feel upset or lethargic, more tired. It can lead to a variety of emotional and physical problems that manifest in our bodies and minds, and it can decrease your ability to function at work or at home. So here are some signs and symptoms of depression. So feeling sad frequently or having a depressed mood, and it just comes out of nowhere. It's not like something sad happened necessarily. It's literally will just come out of nowhere. So it's literally a chemical thing in the brain. It's not that the person's doing anything wrong or even that it's their fault. Just like anxiety, it's just a chemical thing. It can cause changes in appetite. Some people overeat, some people undereat. Trouble sleeping can be a symptom. Loss of energy or always tired, no matter how much sleep they get. Increase in purposeless physical activity. So some people will find themselves doing the same thing over and over again, or staring at something in the distance and losing track of time. A feeling of worthlessness or guilt, and you're not even sure where it came from. Or you might not even have made a mistake or done anything to hurt someone, but you just feel guilty or worthless. And that is one of the biggest signs that I've seen with my students with depression. Difficulty concentrating, thinking, making decisions. This is one to watch for with your friends, family members, fellow students, is thoughts of death or suicide. We have forms that we do with our life coaches here, so we know the referral process. So if you have a friend, family member, somebody you're concerned about, please talk to someone about that. At Excel Center, we're mandated reporters. So I have a whole little paper thing I go through. So I will make sure the person gets the help that they need. So it's very important to know that there are resources out there. And I got these from psychiatry.org. I just love that picture. It speaks great volumes to me. So these are just some of those signs and symptoms. And lastly, what are some coping skills for depression? Once again, in addition to working with your medical provider, not in place of, is having a support system. Exercise can be really good for those struggling with depression. Even simple exercises like walking outside, getting some fresh air, doing things that scare you a little bit, that can be really good with someone with depression, not as much with anxiety. So if you struggle with both, you may not do that one. Healthy eating habits, getting creative, so art therapy, drawing, volunteering to give you a sense of purpose. I found that's helpful even if I'm not struggling with depression, but I'm having a day where my mind is more upset than others. If I can help someone else, that can be helpful. Finding a hobby. So finding something that helps you to know your worth, that you are good at things. Getting enough sleep, relaxing, deep breathing. Some people choose talk therapy where they go and talk with someone. Other people choose, we got music therapy, we got art therapy. I'm going to school for yoga therapy. So there are a lot of different options. Relinquish control. So knowing what you can control versus what you cannot. Learning your triggers again. That's why we talk so much about triggers. So if you can understand your triggers, you can start to implement a coping skill before that depression or anxiety takes over. People with depression, a routine can be really helpful. So waking up at the same time consistently or going to sleep at the same time can be helpful. Some people, if they can do something like organize their living space or their bedroom, can be really helpful for depression. Meditation, treating yourself to something fun, like if you like to go get your nails done, or if you like to go watch a movie with friends, just treating yourself occasionally to something that lights you up. Keeping a journal so you can watch your growth, listening to music, going for a walk, anything outside where you can start to, like when we went outside, we observed nature around us. We listened to the sounds of the leaves. We felt the sun on our skin. Those kind of things, those sensational things are very good, very helpful. Unplugging from technology. I know that's a hard one. We do our work on the computer, oftentimes, social media. That's how we connect with people. But even just unplugging a little bit for a couple hours before bed, or taking some time where you don't feel the constant demand to answer everyone else's requests. Just knowing that it's okay to take some time just for you. Let yourself have a good cry every now and then. That releases serotonin in the brain, which is one of the hormones that makes us happy. So even if you're like, well, I don't feel like crying, it sometimes feels really good to have a good cry. Doing yoga, I had to put that on there. And following doctor's orders is the most important. So just knowing that as you work with your medical professional, if they have something that they want to prescribe, if they have a routine they want to give you, a plan, making sure that you follow their orders directly. And these are additional supplementary things that are not going to affect your medication, are not going to affect your treatment plan. So it's just extra supplemental stuff, nothing to replace. So what you're going to work on today is there is a Google Doc that relates to depression and anxiety. It has several questions where literally all of the answers are in the Google Slides. But I really encourage you to put it in your own words, to think about how you would describe to someone these answers. We already did the journal to reflect on our yoga practice. And if you haven't done that, there's the video here. There is lastly a teacher pay teacher activity that has a few questions on here that if you get time to do, that would be great. It talks about what would be a calming bedtime routine to start to make sure you're getting enough sleep. Who do you enjoy being around that makes you laugh? That's a big one. Do you have a zoo nearby or an animal shelter? If someone struggles with depression, animals can be very helpful, even anxiety as well. So certain animals, they just kind of know, they're natural comforters. So that can be helpful. What's something in your life that you could organize and set a goal to complete by next year? Goal setting is huge for someone who struggles with depression. It helps with motivation. It helps us to think of the future. It helps us to feel alive. So that is a good one. The other page goes over, it has a little bit more of what we talked about, the symptoms of depression. It has suicide hotlines. So if you're ever thinking or know someone who's thinking of that, please talk to someone, but there's a hotline on here. All calls are confidential. It asks you to list out adults that you trust, which is good to know. It may be a friend. It may be a family member. And then 3 things you learned about the topic. So this one's a little bit longer because there's a couple pages about anxiety and a couple pages about depression. And I highly encourage you to take your time to focus on each one. Maybe you will find like one of the worksheets resonates more with you than the other, and you spend a little bit more time on that one, and that's just fine. For anxiety, it has you listing out things you're thankful for, which that's helpful for someone with anxiety, because if you're anxious, you often live in the future. So if you can have gratitude for what you have in the present, it helps you to feel more grounded. A lot of people that have anxiety have automatic negative thoughts, which we've discussed before. So instead of having a negative thought, if we focus on positive attributes about ourselves, like I do this well, I did this kind thing for someone, people like it when I do this, I think the best thing about me is. And then a few things that you can do to make you feel calm. And they give you a few ideas, like Isaac said, coloring earlier. It also lists out crafts. There's a lot of art related stuff in here. Stress balls, movies, taking things apart. So I would say when you're doing the teacher pay teacher thing, if you don't want to do all 4 of those pages, but you want to focus on the either anxiety or depression one, whichever one you think is most beneficial to you at this moment. Even if you don't struggle with depression, we all have times when we are sad. So you can at least find out a little bit more about depression. Or maybe you have a friend who has it, or a friend who has anxiety, and it will allow you to dig deeper into what they're going through. There's a great visual about belly breathing on the anxiety page. Belly breathing is really good for someone with anxiety, where we focus on putting our hand on our low belly and breathing in with the nose, feeling the belly rise, and then breathing out through your mouth, feeling the belly fall. I know this is a lot today, so I appreciate you guys letting me go through it. This is a meditation that's really good for anxiety. I actually have it up on the wall over there. It's called the 5-4-3-2-1 coping technique. So you list 5 things that you can see around you, 4 things that you can feel with your hands, 3 things you can hear, 2 things you can smell and 1 thing you can taste. You don't have to do the tasting one right now if it's easier while you're eating. But even if you kind of focus on the nerves or the sensation in your right now in your mouth, you might not be chewing gum or eating candy, but you might actually, I don't know, I have a residual taste of chicken right now. It's a little weird, but noticing what do you taste? Sometimes if you're wearing a certain scent, perfume, deodorant, you can actually, because you can smell it, you might taste something as well. It gives you the 4, 7, 8 breath on here if you forgot how to do that. And then there's a portion on the bottom. So if you want to pick 2 of the 4 pages on the Teacher Pay Teacher document, that would be awesome. You don't have to do all 4. I'm going to do the 2 about anxiety because that's something I struggle with. By all means, if you want to do all 4, go for it. So just let me know what questions you have. I'm going to stop sharing. And if you're watching the video recording, same goes for you.